no, well, welcome to the real world. It's going to be more. I said faster, better, and more efficient, and more. And the and more comes from AI. So, typically, if we were doing campaign for Netflix or Disney or whoever, we would probably produce a million or 1.5 million different assets, at least technically. Probably only use 50 to 70,000 of them, but the opportunity to produce content, the web was regarded as being the holy grail. AI or AGI is a holy grail squared, or to the power of 2. And the simple fact is you are going to have more content, and that's one of the big opportunities. I mean, broadening the answer a bit to AI from it, there are 5 areas that we see impact from AI already or in formation. The first is around visualization and copywriting. Clearly something that took us 14 days or a month or 2 months to do, we can literally do in 14 hours or less. That's a two-edged sword, because client procurement departments are going to say to us, you're selling hours, and we should not be selling hours, actually. We should be selling outcomes and value. But clients will say to us, you've got a productivity increase, we want to share in that. So that's a plus and a minus. The second area is very much to the question, hyper-personalization at scale. So whereas we were able to, and I think, what we saw at Cannes this year, the interesting thing about Cannes from my perspective this year was that many major clients, even big tech companies, don't understand the power of what I would call the Netflix model. That is the hyper-personalized or personalized model. So if you're interested in football, Manchester United or Juventus or whatever it happens to be, we'll feed you a piece of content that relates to sports. If you're on Wall Street Journal or Bloomberg, whatever, we'll feed you a piece of content that relates to business. We'll watch what the reaction is. It's a loop. And it's not a perfection loop. We don't produce necessarily a perfect product. It is always in continuous reinvention. So the second area is hyper-personalization at scale. Big opportunity. To your question, there's going to be more content. There's going to be more available, and that's very powerful for us. The third area is media planning and buying, particularly on the digital side of the business, which is now 2/3 of the industry. So the world media market the global media market is about $900 billion, and about $650 billion is in tech, in digital. And it's dominated by the 3 platforms. So Google this year probably will be about $225 billion in terms of ad revenues. Facebook about $125 billion, and Amazon around $50, going to $100 billion in my view, because retail media becoming more and more important. The growth there is we can see a lot of packaged goods coming this year. They price up. They've got their price increases this year. Their ad budgets are linked to net revenues. So they're spending more. Where's the money gone? It's gone into the platforms. In the first 2 quarters of this year, Alphabet were up 3% and 6% in net revenues, advertising revenues. Facebook, Meta was up 3% and 12% in the 2 quarters, and Amazon was up 22% and 21%. So you can see the platforms are up probably 7, 8, 9%. We're going into the Q3 earnings season. My bet would be that you'll see strong growth again and into Q4, which is a bit strange because many of them, not all of them, have cut their ad marketing budgets. Google has been very strong and maintained it, but others have been cutting. We'll see what happens next year. So that's the third area is media planning and buying. Automation on the digital side of the business is going to be extremely strong. There are 6 holding companies, probably have about 250,000 people working in media planning and buying. That's not going to be the case in 2 or 5 years' time. There will be significant automation of media planning and buying. Digital media planning and buying can be reduced to a series of algorithms, which is great for us because it enables us to use the data in much more effective ways to make planning and buying decisions. The fourth area is general efficiency. So agency and clients will be more efficient. So, for example, we just launched an exclusive arrangement with NVIDIA, AWS, and Adobe where we will provide outside broadcasting services through a cloud and AGI generated solution, which will, instead of buying an outside broadcasting truck for $7 or $8 or $9 million, amortizing it over 5 years, so at a cost of about $1 million, $1.2 million a year, you'll be able to have a cloud computing AGI generated solution, which is $100,000. So efficiency is going to be paramount. And the fifth area, which I think is the most important area, is what I call the democratization of knowledge. We have 700 people working on Google globally. We have a couple of hundred people working on an NDA client, a telecoms client, but you can guess who it is. How do you get those people to understand all that we're doing globally for those clients? So the really interesting thing about this, and this is a long answer, but I think it's important. There was a guy at DeepMind, part of Google, who resigned because he thought AI was an existential threat. What he said was, if I have 10,000 bots, those 10,000 bots will instantly know what the other bots, one will know what the other 9,999 go. If you think about it in a human way, what we will be able to do is every one of the 700 people who work on Google will know what the other 699 know. That's incredibly important, because the biggest problem in organizations, both client and agency, is the vertical separations. The political issues that you deal with, the motivation issues that you deal with. AI will help us deal with that, because everybody deep in the organization wants to work together. It tends to be the people at the top of the organization that prevent that from happening. So for personal or ego reasons or whatever it happens to be. And that happens both on the client and the agency side. So that area of AI, I actually think, is probably going to be the most powerful. So I think the primary growth driver will be organic. We have to integrate. We've had a strong period of growth over the first 4 years. I think if you go back in time, we're talking about like-for-like net revenues were up about 40%, I think, the first year. In the COVID year, 20% when everybody else was flat on their backs. Then I think we went to 40 plus. And then last year, 26. And of course, this year is a tougher year. But having said that, we brought 30 or so companies together, about 15 on the content side of the business, about 15 on the data and digital media side of the business, and then a couple on technology services. So the offer is a complex one in the sense that it reaches CMOs and CSOs, meaning chief sales officers, and CIOs and CTOs. Here in Italy, we focused more on the content side, but over time, I'm sure we'll build DDM capability and tech services capability to give that integrated offer. And the offer is digital only. It is data-driven, which with AI, we'll get into that in a few minutes, no doubt, with AI becomes more important. It's faster, better, and more efficient, and more, because AI is demanding more. And then finally, it's unitary. And you see that with the translation of the brand from Miyagi to MediaMonks here in Italy. As far as the Italian market is an interesting market in the sense that the local heroes, as we call them, are probably more prominent here, obviously with fashion and luxury, for example, autos, etc. You've got industries which are prominent in the Italian economy, but you've also got very strong local companies too. So the opportunity for Beppe and his team here is to build not only relationships with what we call our whoppers or opportunities or portfolio scale clients and portfolio clients, but also with the local heroes as well. And it's a balance between the two. But the answer to the question is it's very much focused on integrating what we have into one strong fighting force and then growing that organically over time. And the Italian market is pretty idiosyncratic. I mean, it's also very TV driven. It reminds me a lot of Brazil, actually, and you can draw parallels between, say, Globo and Brazil, and obviously Berlusconi and Sky, for example, here in Italy. It's a very visual market, and so quite different to many other markets. I think the two questions probably come together. I mean, we just got jobs data in the US, which were, these are the number of jobs that came onto payrolls, much higher, double what people were expecting. They were expecting 170,000, it was 330,000. So the economy in the US is still hot. And that's an issue for the Fed, and it's an issue for central banks, as to how long do you keep interest rates high? The US 10-year Treasury is trending towards 5%. I know this morning when I left London, it was about 4.8%. That's much higher than it has been. And the Fed are saying higher for longer. And we see that in Europe. Europe was slower into this in terms of raising rates, and probably interest rates will remain high. And you see the impact, for example, here in Italy, not so much in Milan, to be fair, but you see it in Italy in terms of mortgage rates and house prices and the like, and house activity. So my bet would be, and this is, who knows what's going to happen, my bet would be that 24 will be very, very similar to 23. I don't think things are going to change markedly in the real world, in the actual manufacturing, distribution world, until after the US presidential election. And then I think things will change. But up until then, I think things are going to continue to be very similar to what we've seen in 23. Clients have got their hands in their pockets, if I can put it that way. They're very risk averse. CEOs exude confidence at conferences like this or others. But when you actually deal with people inside companies, they're very nervous. And they're nervous about risk. The big issues that we face globally around China and US relationships, or lack of them, around Russia and Ukraine, which looks as though it's going to go on for a long time, and Iran. And the one piece of good news is the Saudi-Israeli initiative. If that comes to fruition, maybe that will make that third issue not evaporate or disappear, but lessen the force. But the first two, in particular, are forces that are disintegrating the world. We've gone through a 50-year period where the world has been much more unified. It's now deglobalizing, de-risking, decoupling, and that poses a big issue. There's a lot of uncertainty. Here in Europe, I think it's particularly tough, and this is not something I like to say, but I'll say it. I think clients in Europe are very focused on cost. They look at the rest of the world, North and South America, the Middle East in particular, less so maybe Africa, regrettably so, but I think less so, and they see Asia as being more growth opportunities. They see Europe, and what do I mean by Europe? I mean principally France, Germany, Italy, Spain, and the UK. I still count the UK as part of Europe in that sense, as being under pressure, under revenue pressure. So taking cost out is critically important. So that's going to be a thing. In terms of the biggest challenge in the next few months, I think it's managing a business where the world is extremely difficult. So the world is not a safe place. There's a reasonable probability that we'll have some sort of security incident between the Chinese and the Americans. A plane will fly too close to another plane, or an aircraft carrier, or whatever it happens to be. And I don't want to be doom and gloom, but I do think that's a realistic outturn of what's happening in the world. So it's a difficult place. So geographical fragmentation and focus on markets for growth. North and South America. Latin America is a part of the world that is totally underestimated, in my view. Strong creative and strong tech talent in those areas. The Middle East and Asia. China, the big issue around China, if you're big in China, do you want to be bigger given the Taiwanese risk? If you're small in China, and what do I mean by where you should be? 20% of your sales should be in China. China's 18 trillion out of 100 trillion GDP. That's where Apple is there. Apple's in the right place. Unilever's at 9%. I can think of some manufacturers that have 70% of their production in China. You don't want to go bigger. So India, Indonesia, Vietnam, the 3 Asian countries will be in the top 50 according to projections of GDP. The first will be China, they say, despite China's issues, economic issues at the moment. The second will be the US, third India, fourth Indonesia, fifth Germany. So 3 of the top 5 economies are going to be Asian economies. So there's going to be a lot of action there. And coming back to Europe, unfortunately, I think there's a focus on cost. And the other side of the equation, apart from geographical fragmentation, so picking your markets carefully for growth is critically important if you're a client. The other thing is digital transformation, reducing cost through technological change. In terms of, I think the last question is around technology, which technology. So linking it to what I just said, when you're taking cost out, I mean, you're becoming more efficient. I would say blockchain technology. I don't get crypto. Neither did Sam Bankman-Fried, to be fair. I don't get crypto. I'm rather like Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett on that. I don't really understand it. But blockchain, I understand, I think. Taking out middlemen, taking out middle women is going to be increasingly important to reduce friction in the system. So that's one technology. The metaverse is underestimated. I'm biased because of our relationship with Meta and Facebook. But the opportunities around healthcare, I have a healthcare issue myself at the moment. The metaverse, in terms of surgical work, healthcare work, is extraordinarily effective around training, working from home, working from anywhere, music, sports, entertainment. We do the NBA streaming, virtual reality. Great example of what's going on in that world. So the metaverse, and then you go to obviously AI and AGI, as I've tried to explain, and last but not least, quantum computing and cloud. So those, I've come out with 5, but in the next year or so, I think AI obviously takes the lead. That is permeating everything we do. There's a lot of cynicism about that. There's too much hype. I don't think so. I would go out on a limb, and we've tried to position MediaMonks as a leader in that area, and our relationship, for example, the NVIDIA, AWS, Adobe relationship is a good example of that. So apologies for banging on too long, but that's it.